I guess with the term senior developer or senior programmer comes the added responsibilities of being able to
And
manage the
expectations.
code. Exactly, because
Yeah.
when you see that an applicant coming in saying I'm a senior developer, you don't expect this guy to just sit there and code
Oh no,
and
no
ignore
fucking way.
any problems he
Yeah.
runs into, any problems he has with the code. You want that feedback.
Yeah.
But like as I guess a manager and an owner of a development company even as a product owner,
Yeah.
you want me to come to you and say this is a bad idea.
100%.
Don't do this way because
Yeah.
it's going to cause us
Yeah.
problems later.
Oh shit, that might be dangerous. All right, so I guess we're live, Mr. Nick.
Yeah. All right.
How's it going, my man? Good.
It's going well.
Yeah. Almost 12 years with us, so you saw a lot of things here, right?
I've seen some very interesting things.
Yeah, exactly. So that's
over
why
the years.
that's why I brought you in. I wanted to talk a bit about like developers mindset, you know, and yeah, because you also have a lot of experience, so and I just want to get through. What? Let's get started with that. Like, what got you into programming?
For me, I think it was just an interest in problem solving.
Yeah.
I was always interested in computers and how coding worked and the problem solving aspect of it. You know, you're given a task. This is the feature you need. What's the best way to go about it? And I guess the thought process behind it is what
Yeah.
attracted me to it.
Right, because also in the generations that we're in, because we're pretty close in terms of generations, but it's not like today with the phones. I mean, every kid today, like they get alive, they get first day with a phone, right? So, but at the time, like personally, I got the first computer like around 16 or 17.
Yeah,
Something like that?
same here.
Yeah.
I mean, back then, programming was this.
Right.
When I was in high school, programming was this crazy world where only geniuses could do it because home computers were just starting to become big, really.
What is the first language you work with?
Ever. Ever, it was basic. Just
Yeah?
Q basic. Just simple DOS command line.
Yeah.
And, it screen asks you a question and you answer, you select your answer. And
Right.
That's what it was.
Yeah, and yeah, I can't remember if it was basic. I didn't really get. I mean, the first computer wasn't really a computer. Like we had a TRS-80
Okay.
at the time. It was close to the Commodore. I don't know if you remember that. And you could program some games in it, but you had basically a book, and you would just transcript what the code said. Like you don't understand a shit of it.
Yeah,
But,
that's how I did with basic was.
Yeah, pretty much. And actually it worked with a tape. Like we would load games with tape.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if you remember that.
I remember there being tapes. I never actually used them.
Yeah, and so technically that was the first computer, but the real, like my first computer, my first Hewlett-Packard computer, yeah, I didn't code on it though. I was, I was more into like the systems itself, but
Yeah, well, I mean, that too. I remember my first computer had 4 megs of RAM, I want to say.
yeah, shit, yeah,
Back then, and like you couldn't run everything at once. It couldn't load Windows or have Windows loaded somewhere and then play the shareware version of Doom. You had to like go into
Yeah.
your setup, your config, and say, load this, don't load this, and that's actually, I guess, that predates
yeah, or
my
install.
programming, and that's where I got the drive to start. Okay, well, if I play around with this,
Yeah.
and I broke my computer many times.
Yeah, yeah.
When I was just starting to learn how to do things.
Right,
and
right.
you learn how to undo things.
Right. the amount of time I formatted my computers at time, holy shit. Or we would install Windows with floppy disk, like I don't
Right.
with like 30, 40, 50
Yeah,
floppy
you know.
disk. Yeah.
Disk 1 is done. Please insert this too. You hope it never crashes.
That you don't have one floppy that
That's,
is
bad
damaged.
read, yeah.
Yeah.
I've experienced that as well.
Yeah. And when you did your studies, so did you learn PHP at school, or you learned PHP after school?
No, I learned PHP in school.
Yeah.
But actually, when I was in school, it was PHP 4.
Mm.
So it still wasn't classes. There was no object-oriented
Right.
design to it. It was, PHP block at the top of the page, HTML at the bottom of the page, some mixing a little bit. And
what other language did you learn at school?
At the time, I learned Java, which I haven't practiced since school.
Right.
And we played around with, with other stuff. The thing was, when I did my schooling, it was the first year of a new program where they had just switched from teaching everyone all the old languages,
Right.
C and Fortran, and they were
Right.
trying to move to a new program. So they threw everything at us. I learned a bit of Java. I learned, my database courses were
Right.
SQL, Oracle, Microsoft Access.
Is there anything you would have changed at the time, like in the school program? Now, looking back here.
Looking back, definitely, and I think they have changed it. Is first semester was one course on HTML, and then second semester was another course on just CSS and JavaScript. Really, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, you can get that all over with, in
Right.
less than one course.
Yeah, for a full semester, right?
Yeah.
At the same, not the most passionate.
No, it was very
Yeah.
slow going at first.
Yeah,
Even my Java course was in a Java interpreter.
Yeah.
I can't remember, Ready to Program, I think it was called. So we didn't learn much program.
Yeah.
We learned very basic programming.
Right. Oh, interesting. The since we're talking about school, I had a question for you, and what particularly do you feel that even today, programmers or developers are not getting at school or getting prepared for, or prepare for, let's say?
It's a tough question.
Because look, you've been here for 12 years, right?
Right.
So you work with many different type of developers, so you saw everything, or mistakes, or good shot,
Right.
the good dev, the bad devs, you saw it all, right?
Well, I guess let me start. Schooling wise, I did a technical degree, so I didn't do university courses.
yeah.
So I can't really comment on what university teaches you or not. But
Right.
I've seen a few guys here, and
Yeah, exactly.
I think the biggest thing is school teaches you best case scenario. Here you have the perfect code,
Yeah.
and add your functions and do this. And real world is here's this code that somebody wrote, and it's kind of messed up, and it's not as efficient as it should be, and so the adaptability from this is the way it should be done to how you have to do it when you're working with someone else's code.
Right. So are you saying that they should, or it might happen today,
Yeah.
we don't know, but would you say that would have been good that they basically had piece of code already, and they get people work with it, try to fix it or improve it?
Yeah, I think actually something like that in school might help and be
Right.
here's a broken computer. Instead of always creating something new and optimal, maybe
Right.
they can throw you something out of left field and say, here's a buggy program,
Right.
fix it.
Yeah, that would be definitely helpful. Because you've been fortunate in some projects for sure, that you've built from scratch.
Yeah.
But when a guy or girl gets out of school and get on the job market, the chances that they work on on a brand new project from scratch is very minimal in the first couple of years.
Right.
So, yeah.
A lot of people do get those positions where they're working with a good team. They
Yeah.
become part of a good team that
Right.
has built their application. It all depends, I guess, on the company.
No, exactly. Yeah.
Like you said, I've been fortunate to build some projects from scratch,
Yeah.
but also I've been fortunate to get put on projects to either add to a client's developer pool or pick up from another developer where the project was well structured, well coded.
Yeah.
And it's a dream to work with as compared to something else that somebody kind of wrote as quickly as they could just
Right.
to get working.
No, exactly. Would you, without naming something very specific, like what was the type of project in the past 12 years that you really liked, you know? Would you say that it's the one that you're currently on, or you had...
The one I'm currently on is definitely one of my good ones, top ones that I've worked with.
Yeah.
Just the team of developers that I'm working on in-house here, and the team of developers that we're collaborating with the client. It's a great group of people.
What do you like about that, or about them? Like, what the developers you work with, what do you like about it?
They're technical.
Yeah.
So the client themselves has like technical people. So when we present ideas and say, look, it's better if we do something this way, it's an open discussion as opposed to just the client saying, well, yes, but that might take, a week longer and we don't have that kind of time. Don't do it badly.
Right.
Like, I don't want to say do it badly, but in the end, we've had that situation where a client says, no, do it that way. And later on they do come back and we have to fix it. And not only fix it fast.
Right. Actually, does that really exist unless like the project has been funded for millions and you hire like a big amount of really, really, really good dev and architect and all the right people for a project, that a project is actually developed exactly at, at the millimeter, how it should be done until the end.
It never
exactly,
is.
Yeah.
I worked with, I remember one contract we had, it was external, and it was a big company, globally known. I was helping them out on their project for a client that is known, like big, huge client. I mean, everybody knows them.
I think
so. You would expect, okay, the structure's going to be there, they're going to be there, the budget's going to be there, and it was. But in the end, there's always a time constraint. There's always a change. There's always something that when you complete it, the client will look and be like, actually, I had something else in mind. Can we redo it? And redoing it takes time away from doing something else. And
what do you think is the cause of that? Is it just like preparation, or actually being prepared 100% doesn't exist in this world?
I'm leaning towards the fact that being prepared 100% doesn't exist. There's always something that changes. There's always somebody who changes their mind, or when you finally have it in front of you, maybe you thought of a different way of doing it, or it might be better. But that comes down to, programming is also a world of adaptability. You have to be able to adapt to the situation, to the client's needs, to the project's needs.
Yeah. That reminds me, and it's not their fault, right? Because some people reach out to us and ask us for a quote or an estimate, and they really expect that the budget estimate, the time will be like very solid, 100% solid. But what they have in terms of content to explain the project is, gets in an email, right?
Yeah.
And it's just not realistic. Even if you had, let's say, a business analyst and project manager and for a few months who build the documentation. But then you're spending most
of your budget on the planning and requirement building.
Exactly, instead of just developing.
And time as well, because it's going to take a lot of time just to get everything down to the most minute detail.
Yep. Yeah. No. 100%. I think I'd rather, because look, if you're going to spend 2-3 months of a couple guys and 2-3 months, I'm generous, because if the project is really huge, you're probably going to spend many months, if not a year, planning and all the use cases.
And that's it. The longer a project is planned for, the harder it is to secure, let's say, every part of it.
Yeah. Because
as you go along, something might change, and you don't know if in 6 months' time a business requirement might change. Maybe the business is doing something differently, and the application needs to adapt to that as well.
Now, the architect that's going to look at your requirement document after a year, is he going to say, well, this doesn't make sense that I build it this way, right? And so we're going to change this, change that. This affects a feature. And like you said, if the business model change, then if you change one thing, then you start you open the door for changing many things, right? So
Right.
that anyway,
That we've seen as well,
Yeah.
little change.
I'm guilty
leads to
of
big
it.
change, and-
I'm guilty of it. I've been like that a lot in the past, for sure. And
oh yeah, a lot of little changes equals a big
exactly.
change.
Yeah. So you know, that's what we keep saying to clients, that, you know, you better just use the time right now to develop things, because just get moving, right? There's a nice book called Rework from the guys who found Basecamp.
Okay.
And that's one of the things they say is just get it done. You know, it's never going to be perfect.
Right.
It's never going to be as you thought, and just get it done.
That's definitely something I've learned is like
Exactly, and
It's-
get it done, get it done, get it out there, try it, and then you're also going to learn things, because that's another thing, right? And like in theory, like you have your project, you build it, you document it, you push it, now you start testing it, and customer experience or usability,
Right.
something gets wrong, and then you, oh shit, no, that cannot work this way. And
yeah,
I've been
we've seen that happen in many different projects.
I've been guilty of that like many times.
And I find, especially in any project that deals with an industry in sales or marketing, or that's ever changing. Like you
yeah.
always need to adapt to your client base. You always need to adapt to your
Yeah.
users. So every couple of months, maybe you have something different,
Right.
or you want to add something or change the way they use it, make it easier for the user to use your project.
Right. Now that's a good segue. In your opinion, if you're working on a project that continuously, how do you say that? Continuously changed because the sales process changes, or the client needs changes. Anyway, that's pretty much our internal tool. But what, in your opinion, you need to do in order to keep the code clean, scalable, on, you know, that in 3 years from now you're not going to be like, holy shit, like, okay, this is all a mess, version of PHP or Laravel or this thing, this, that, I mean, it's not up to date. What's in your opinion, like what you need to do along the way in order to make it like still good?
I know documentation.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I mean, even to the very basic, just comment your code.
Yeah.
One thing that for our internal product that I try to push when working with other developers on it is, if we're replacing a functionality, just delete the old functionality.
Yeah.
I know I've seen the trend before where you add a new service or a new API and they'll leave the old code. They're like, you know what, we might go back. That's what we have Git for. That's what we have version control for. Take out the old stuff. If it's deprecated and it's not being used, remove it, keep the code, only keep what you're using and keep it clean.
It almost comes like to say, like in your house, you want to have a little wall, but there's something in the middle. You're not going to build on top of it. Like you're going to remove what's there and then build a wall next to it. I mean, at place where it is, right?
Yeah. Well, that's it. You want to, if it's something that's going to be completely, a new feature that is completely independent, then code it independently. Don't build it on top of deprecated code.
Right.
And like change the new code so that it slightly changes the old stuff and it gets you where you want to go. Just put a new piece. It does take a bit longer, let's say, but in the end, it takes longer initially, but it saves you time.
Well, I'm sure, I mean, I don't have an example that comes to mind like super quick, but I'm sure we have plenty of those that in the past, you and I, well, and the team, we work on internal projects, and we basically neglect this part.
Yeah.
Thinking that we would save time, to a point where we're getting like a year or two along the way, and we have to rebuild the whole thing.
Right, because then you come back to it
It's
and you
too
need
much
to make a
time.
change, and it's, well, this is referenced in 4 different places, or this is used by different services, and you're like, okay, now I need to go back. Do I really need that?
Yeah.
Do I need this? How is this going to affect a different section of the site? And then you track it down and you realize, oh, it's deprecated. It's not even used anymore.
Yeah, and it gets overwhelming to have to fix or, you know, clean the mess that we actually didn't clean along the way in the past year or two, right? And
Well, I mean, there's been times when I've coded something fast and it's like, that's the next guy's problem. Well, I'm the next guy. I come back a year later and I'm the next guy, and like I see my comments and this might be a problem later, and well, now it's my problem.
Yeah, no, exactly.
That's taught me to, like, when I can, keep it as clean as possible. Take out what's not needed anymore, because I might be the next guy.
Sometimes, actually, we have this internal tool, let's call it ERP. Like, we manage a lot of things with it. And sometimes, like, you drive me crazy with your, let's create a ticket for this in the future. Let's create another ticket for this and ticket for that. And then I'm trying to look at what needs to be done. And I have 15, 20 tickets. I'm like, what is, and it's in the future. Yeah, but I don't want to see them in my list. But at the same time, I get it. Like, you don't want to forget about it.
Right.
It's not urgent, but it's going to have to be done, right?
Right.
And you said documentation. Like, are you, like you said, at the minimum, you document your code, but like, I know you're really good with documentation.
Even 4 lines of comments
in
a function for like 1 line of code.
Right.
I find it saves time, because if you didn't have that, someone might have to read through your entire function just to figure out what you're doing at the very end.
Right.
And, so that's the way I code. Like, I try to keep my code clean. I try to comment. Nobody's perfect. I'm the first to admit it. Sometimes I just have, a long function with no comments, because that's where I got to.
Yeah. But, I know you're really good with outside code documentation, like wikis.
Yeah, I try
those
to
things.
Specifically
what's important in it? Like, I mean, let's say a junior is watching this video or listening to this podcast. Like, what he should be thinking about, or what she should be thinking about.
Well, that's using the ERP as an example.
Right.
I try to use that as like an example of what I would love to see whenever I jump on a project.
Yeah.
Is where is the code found? Git repositories, GitHub, Bitbucket, et cetera, et cetera. How is the project set up for local development? What's the development process on it?
Yeah.
Are we using Git? Do new features go into feature branches, require code review, merge request? Is everybody just committing to master? Don't do that. Is there specific APIs used in the project? How are they set up? How do we get credentials? How are they used? All the bits and pieces.
Right.
I try to keep it up to date, especially for our internal system.
But it requires a lot of time too. Like, and that's the thing. I think it's important, because a lot of people, especially, many of our clients do not value enough the importance of documentation.
No, I've seen that before. Even when I've made estimates, like, well, why is the management and documentation estimate so high? And really, I don't even think it's that high. I usually lower it. But it's because, again, this business is always changing. People come, people go. It's the nature of the business.
Yeah.
Let's say you want to change developers on your project,
right?
Or we found someone better. Well, if the local install instructions for the project are detailed, where can I find the code? How do I install it? How do I set it up? Well, there you go. Yeah. I have a checklist of how to get this running on my local. If it's not there, and the old developer is still around, well, then you're lucky. Yeah. You may be spending a couple of hours, double billing because of the new install and the knowledge transfer. If the old developer left, well, then you have somebody who's just given a bunch of code and trying to figure out how to get it running, how it's supposed to run.
How should it be? How should it be documented or set up so someone else that doesn't know the project can jump in, read, get it set up, get it running, and just start working on it? I
don't think there's a perfect recipe for that. Yeah. But at the very least, where can I get the project? Is there anything special I need to install?
Right.
You need PHP version 7.0, let's say, specifically because this project is using that, or that's what the client server is on, and you want to replicate their environment directly. Does it need outside plugins?
Right.
I don't know. It uses iMagick and WK HTML to PDF, let's say, to work properly, to test all the features. Does it require a special configuration?
Mm.
These are all minor things, but are big blockers when you're trying to track them down in the functionality.
Right.
A simple one line in the documentation saying just have this installed saves you an hour of digging through code, okay, what's the error message? Why is it failing? What's it supposed to be?
Right. It reminds me that, remember that guy we had for a couple of years, and we were saying that he was so freaking meticulous with his documentation. And like I remember someone looking at the documentation, and he set up the environment in a fingertip because he had done it so well with snapshot and things. And
I remember that project. That was not an easy project to install. It
Yeah.
had a lot of pieces on different servers and a lot of different software that you needed to get it running. And at one point, I remember saying, "Yeah, okay, maybe it's a bit overkill," but no, like. There's no overkill with documentation. That's the way I feel. There's no overkill with it. It can't be too detailed.
Yeah, I find that too much. Well, actually, nah. It's not. I mean, I'm not gonna say everyone because that's not true, right? But there's still today I find too many developers who do not have the patience to write proper documentation,
right?
Or fill up like a document with how to set it up, like I like what you said. Like it's okay. Now in this case, it's me that is the next guy. But you also need to think about the next guy. Like you don't.
It's like that saying. Always code as if the person who's going to be working on it after you is a homicidal maniac who knows your address.
Right. Yeah, and you also don't want to be given a project that doesn't have a proper documentation. So it's
well, that's it. I've gotten projects with proper documentation, and it's a breeze. Like the only time that I reach out to the previous developer is thanks for the instructions. It was a breeze to install. As opposed to back and forth all day, 300 questions.
But what makes some people not wanting to put the effort, and just because it doesn't require much time, right? I mean, once you know it, a couple of hours, you already have it.
But it's one of those things that as the project changes, you got to keep putting it up to date. It's not a one-time thing. It's every time there's a change, you got to make sure that's put up to date.
Discipline,
And I know that bothers it becomes an afterthought because you're like, okay, let me develop this or change this. Okay, let me test it. Once it works, then documentation should be updated to say how it works. But then by the time it's tested, while it's being tested and working, you're already working on something else or the next part, and it falls through the cracks a lot of times.
But at the same time, I mean, it's would you say it's work ethic, it's discipline? I mean, because I know what you mean. Like we also did that mistake in the past, like where we just forget about the documentation and
totally.
And so nobody's
because
perfect.
You just assume, well, the guy's working here, he knows it, we're good, we have somebody who knows it, or he kind of talked to the other person about it, and the other guy has an idea, but doesn't work out.
What if the developer get hit by a car, right?
Yeah, you'd be surprised. It's well, when there's a bus factor of 1 on a project, it's bad. It's not everyone has the budget to have like 2 guys working on the project, but it's definitely adding plus value. In our cases, like we try as much as we can to, if someone is going to not be on the project anymore, that someone can have knowledge transfer. So that's also a plus value we're bringing. But when you work with, let's say, a freelancer and only one freelancer, sometimes you might actually look. There's plenty of good freelancers, right? But you might end up on someone that is going to disappear eventually, and then you're screwed because you need someone to rescue your project, right? That's true.
So, hundreds of thousands of developers out there, right? And I'm sure that there's hundreds of thousands of style.
Oh, definitely. Everybody's got their own style.
Exactly. And I'm the same way too. Like when I was sysadmin, I would much prefer to reset up my server than work on a server that someone already had set up, and not the folder structure or where things are installed. I don't like it, but that was a preference thing. So, but when you said budget and clients, it also comes down to what's in the best interest of the person you're working with, right? Like if what I don't like personally is No, let's be honest. Like what I hate, what I fucking hate, right? is when someone when a developer wants to put his own interest first. And
Right.
It's not his that matters, right? He's being compensated to work on a project for someone that put a lot of money and all
Right.
his savings on it. It's not. It's not. We're not dealing with your emotions right now. We're dealing with the
Yeah.
client's money, and if it makes sense to rebuild, because it happened often, right? Often it, like you're gonna spend. Let's say you rebuilding would take 5 months, right? And fixing and refactoring would take 4. What's the point, right? Unless you
Yeah.
really don't have that money extra in term of budget, what's the point of doing that? Like it's the same thing with a house, right? You would, for a similar budget, you would prefer to just put it down and build from scratch,
Yeah.
and not have a new. I mean, this house with not the proper foundation, not the
Well,
proper,
that's it. If I had to renovate everything for the same
Exactly,
price that
yeah.
it would cost me to build from new the way I want it,
yeah.
I'm gonna go
So
with
so
you.
when does someone should say the code is a mess, doesn't make sense for me to work on it?
I think, I think the problem isn't saying that the code is a mess. I think it's the justification.
Yeah.
If a developer would say this code is a mess, I can't work with it because of this.
Yeah.
For reasons A, B, and C, will prevent me from doing
Right.
whatever, completing the feature properly, making it work as efficiently as it should, completing the task in the allotted amount of time. That's one thing. But if it's just the developer says code's a mess, I don't want to work with it because it's going to be too hard and he doesn't want the headache, you know, because I've seen that. And, you know, I've seen someone, this is too hard, it's too tough. It took me 2 days to set up the server, and you know, we give it to another guy, and he's got the server up and running in 4 hours.
Right.
And you know, because he took the time to just look a bit further into it.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And you know, especially in the past couple of years, I noticed that the word senior was very easy to use. And it's the same, I don't know if it's the generation or the instant gratification thing, because a lot also, like, on another like subject, there's a lot of people calling themselves entrepreneur, you know, but they never had
Right.
a punch in their face whatsoever, right? So, and I find that a lot of people call themselves senior developers, but they had like 3, 4 years, 5 years experience. They didn't do much than that. And I'm not
Right.
saying they don't know.
No.
But my definition of a senior developer and yours is, you know, are probably
probably different than that.
than them. Yeah?
It's funny because I actually had this discussion with a couple of guys last week. We touched on it briefly. A couple other developers here and so some developers from outside. I mean, even me personally, there's some days where I don't consider myself senior.
That's a funny one.
It's just the way it goes. It's
Yeah.
you know, I've seen people who like 2 months working in a company with, you know, 2 years experience. After 2 months, they'll add senior to their like web signature, and or they'll add it to their LinkedIn profile. And you know, senior, having a couple of years experience programming is, I feel, just one requirement to call yourself a senior developer. I don't think it's the only requirement.
No.
I mean, for example, me starting out here, I had 2 years professional experience with one company before coming here.
Programming?
Programming.
Okay. I
And
forgot about
some
that.
other, you know, some other little projects some other time. But it was all on my own. I was the only dev for that company.
Right.
So definitely I was still like, you know, after 2 years, some people might say, oh, I'm intermediate because I worked 2 years on a project. I built it up from scratch. Yeah, but I did it on my own. I was junior. I did it my way. I still considered myself junior.
With what you knew at the time also?
With what I knew at the time. And so I think not only should you have definitely a couple of years experience before you can be considered a senior, is where was that experience?
Yeah.
Were you just developing by yourself? You know, were you making the same mistakes for the whole 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? Or did you work with other senior devs or more experienced developers where
Right.
you learned and grew.
No, exactly. What did you build? Did
Right.
you build something from scratch?
Right, because
successful?
we've had people in interviews where they're like saying they're senior developers and yeah, I built this application. It's got, you know, tens of thousands of lines of code. And I'm like, okay, well, the lines of code doesn't matter for the application. What does your application do and how efficiently does it do it? Because
Right.
your 10,000 lines of code might be 5,000
Yeah.
if you're using it properly.
Right. Right. And also, what resource did it need to run on, or what? I mean, like,
Yeah.
I remember a project we had worked on, like at something around like 600,000 visitors a day with many servers, load balancers, and synchronization and stuff like that, all on PHP 4, I think, at the time.
Yeah.
You know, and it was still running fine. So when things are done, don't know. I mean, every technology has their pros and cons. Same with PHP. Let's be honest. You know,
Right.
there's cons to PHP, but it's still. I think the last stats that I've looked at was like 80% of the website runs
Are
on
using it. Yeah.
Even Facebook has a framework or a custom framework with PHP. So there's a lot of preacher out there who don't like PHP, or some PHP guy that really don't like anything else. But
Yeah.
things are never too white or too black, or there's gray areas. Like depend what you want to do too.
Yeah.
But coming back to the senior, like to me, and correct me if you think I'm wrong. Okay, look, it's unscripted.
Yeah.
I give you the right. Okay,
No
it's on
worries.
camera. So, but to me, as senior, it's more than just the knowledges.
Oh.
Like it's
Definitely.
like it's okay. You can know your language, but there's always new things. Every time, every year, every month, there's a new JavaScript framework. There's a new, like remember at the time, I don't know where is it right now. Like I remember a few years ago, Ember.js was the big thing.
Right.
I didn't hear from it for a long time. Probably still use. We didn't use lately. Now Vue.js is the thing as we talk. Angular was just before, maybe still. So there's always new frameworks and trend that seems to be more fun to work with. I understand that. Like it's cool to explore something new.
Right.
But you can. I mean, so where I'm going with that is that knowledges in technology today are not good tomorrow.
They might not be.
So
And that's leading, like, another requirement, I guess you could say, for a senior developer is, I mean, anybody can memorize how to use a function. And it doesn't matter if you let's say using PHP, for example, if you know all the functions of PHP and
Right.
I know how to use it in every case and I know the ins and outs of all the syntax, that doesn't make you senior because let's be honest, it's 12 years plus I'm using PHP. I still I still have to look up sometimes the parameter order for simple functions like in array.
And I've saw even in the past year or two, some junior coming to you with things, and you're like, oh shit, I didn't thought of that,
Yeah.
So that, I mean, you
I
cannot
think
know everything.
It's not the knowledge of the language itself. It's I guess the adaptability in using the language, because I've looked at code that I don't know the language at all, but I've been able to figure out some parts and help another developer just by talking out the idea. Like I can't actually code the functions for him, but we can figure out the process flow.
Exactly.
I think that's an aspect of a senior developer is not the actual programming itself, but like the architecture aspect of it.
One thing that you actually taught me about what a senior should have is with our internal tool, and it's being able to go to the product owner or product manager and say, okay, we need to stop here and fix or refactor this portion because it's going to cause a problem later on.
Yeah.
And a lot of developers are not able to put their foot down and say that we need to stop. Don't do this feature, or you want to do this feature, but did you thought about this, or do you think you will use that one eventually along the way? And I'm like, no, I don't think. Are you sure, Raph? Said, yeah, I'm pretty sure. Or when we remove Stripe from it, like, are you sure you won't use it again? No, I think I'm pretty cool with that. Like Stripe is a good platform, but but for that particular need, like we didn't need it.
Right.
So I think this is like a no-brainer. If some
Yeah,
you're just being a good developer if you cannot do that. Like if you know,
yeah,
if
like
you know,
you can be a great developer.
yeah,
But I guess with the term senior developer or senior programmer comes the added responsibilities of being able to
And
manage the
expectations.
code. Exactly, because
Yeah.
when you see that an applicant coming in saying I'm a senior developer, you don't expect this guy to just sit there and code and
Oh no,
and
no
ignore
fucking way.
any problems he
Yeah.
runs into, any problems he has with the code. You want that feedback.
Yeah.
But like as I guess a manager and an owner of a development company, or even as a product owner,
Yeah.
you want me to come to you and say this is a bad idea.
100%.
Don't do this way because
Yeah.
it's going to cause us problems later.
Yeah, and same with. I mean, look, we had a client. We had a client who we didn't do much refactoring along the way, and at some point, things were not going so well, so we were reconsidering rebuilding it, but coming down to the client and say, we should rebuild the thing that we've been working for months on, it's not very a good point of sales. So, but when I explained that, yeah, but look, we did a lot of features, but because we couldn't, or we hadn't the budget, or we hadn't the time to refactor along the way, now we get to a point that we need to stop development, fix what we didn't fix.
Right.
And actually, if we do that, it's going to take many months, and we just better, now that we know your need, it's better to
Right.
just rebuild it the proper way. And even at some point I have explained this like picturing a house on a foundation, and like initially your project was having this foundation, and you wanted that was your requirements.
Right.
And so you build a house, 2 floor, a couple of rooms. Eventually you wanted to add a new room, a new floor, a new this, a new that, and now you have this freaking small foundation that can hold this
your
big
house
house,
is
and now it's
coming
starting
out
to
on all
tangling
sides
and
and-
eventually fall apart. And that's what happened in most projects, because people don't see, I mean, they don't value what they can see. Like
Right.
we don't value health because we're not sick.
Right.
But when someone gets sick, oh shit, I need to wake up and do something about it, right? And that's, I find that it's the same thing with projects. Unless the client or the person with his project has experience, some sort of experience with technologies and development,
Right.
knows the value of that. But someone,
It's always a
it's
tough
not
sell.
broken, don't fix it. you
Like
know?
in an ideal programming world, yes. Every time there's an update, I'd be given the time to update. Every time like there's a version change in the framework or something,
Right.
I'd be able to test it out,
Yeah.
and I'd be given the time just to write tests for every aspect of the project. Unfortunately, that's not always the case, and we don't get that.
This is like the perfect segue for my next subject. But I want to close on the senior dev. Like the work ethic is a big thing also for me. Like, as if you call yourself a senior dev, you have such a great work ethic. This, like the refactoring thing we were talking about, is also part of the work ethic. Like being there for your client, being there, being professional, not wasting time. Like it's all comes down to work ethic. And I've saw people calling themselves senior, and I'm not saying that they were not good. Like I have a few guys coming in my mind, like they're freaking good, like they're really good developers, and but in terms of work ethic, they have some things to improve, right? Also,
Yeah, I'm not even sure which guys you're talking about, but I've worked with some of them, and
Yeah.
I've worked with developer. Like I'm not perfect. I don't have like the knowledge base on even like new technologies. There's guys who know leaps and bounds ahead of me in being able to program with a specific language or a specific framework, but that's all they can do. They
Right.
can't. If I ask them how to do something or ask for guidance so that I can finish what I'm working on, they can't communicate.
Yeah.
They can't teach go on Stack Overflow, just figure it out,
Yeah.
or just do this, or you know.
or they can speak up. Like, for example, this I see it all the time. It's not really related to senior, but in general, like I mean, in this company here, we try to, encourage people to talk and speak.
Yeah, definitely try to encourage collaboration as much as possible.
Every time, like I said to every single guy we interview, and like you have the absolute right to say everything you want to anybody you want, but some just can't. They just can't. At the same time, if the client or the project manager or me or Tony or someone asks the person, is everything okay? And you say yes, you're sending that message that everything is cool. So then I'm going to keep dealing the way I'm dealing with you because you just send me a message that everything is cool. So if I open you a door, at least take it, enter, and talk about it, Because if something is bothering you and you're not addressing it, and then someone asks you, is everything okay about blah? And you say, yeah, it's all cool, because you're too shy.
Yeah. Then, no, but like you said, that's kind of away from senior. That's just, I mean, I understand it because I'm like a shy person, an introverted person, and it's hard to bring it up sometimes, especially when you're newer in a company. But, and maybe that's one of the tasks of being one of the senior managers here, senior programmers here, is I try to be as open with people, with the new devs, and tell them, look, ask questions, make them feel as comfortable as possible, because let's be fair, we don't want. You don't want to work in a place where everyone just comes in, sits down at their desk, lists forward, and 8 hours later they leave. Some people are like that, and that's fine. That's who they are. They come in, they'll maybe wave, or they'll just sit down and sit at their computer. But when everybody's like that and feels like there's no energy. No,
exactly not. And the thing I was saying a few minutes ago about that was a good segue is in our previous video I was saying that a job, an employer or a client, to me personally, it's the same thing. It should be seen as the same thing. It's just the format is different. But also I find that in order and you're gonna have a lot to say about it, I'm sure. Oh, in order for a developer to do a good job, I think you need to be a good client also. Like, you cannot be a prick as a client. You cannot be like giving shit all the time to the person. And that's the same thing for the employer. So and for those who didn't watch the previous video or the podcast, like I was just saying that if you're having a job in a company, it's the same as if you were just a freelancer with a client. You should see that person that you're working with or for as a client. And that person should see yourself as, well, not only a partner type of thing, but also you need to be a good client with them so they can do a good job. Yeah. Because everyone's human. Like, everyone has emotion, and it's not fun to work with a client that give you shit all the time.
No, it's really not. It's it's not fun to work with a client who always has a problem with something you do.
Yeah.
But not like you could be doing 100% what they're asking you to do, but they keep changing their mind and they're not happy with it and they're not happy with the result, and somehow it comes back on you. And and the first time that happens, okay, I'll do better, and then it keeps happening, and you get demotivated. Exactly. By the end, you're kind of just, whatever I'm gonna do, this guy's gonna have a problem with. So
exactly,
I'm gonna get paid my salary no matter what. So I might as well just come in and do what I have to do.
And actually, the client or the employer create his own problem by doing that. I understand. Like, let's just talk about clients for a second. I understand they pay a lot of money and they want to feel in control. I get that. That. But I think it's as much important as to be a good client than being a good provider. When we, I don't know, like personally, I try to be good with any provider we have, and pay quick and just to create a good relationship. I just value that. Not everyone does, but I wasn't go back 10, 15 years ago, I was a prick too. I would give shit to people I was paying for because I thought it was the way to go.
Yeah, it's
until you take that spot.
It ends up being. And it's sad to say, it is kind of a trend. People expect, I'm paying for something, customer's always right, and like you got to take my shit if I
Yeah,
get
let's
and like no, I really don't have to. It's
no.
uh
And I think it just like you said it demotivate people and in programming where probably like 70% of the work is to think.
yeah.
You cannot
It's
you can't be playing in the mind of the developer.
though yeah.
And you can tell him neither like what to do, how to do it, and like tell the problem, explain your thing, and let him figure out a way to do it.
You know, and while speaking, that's the other thing sometimes clients don't see is look, you'll give us a huge problem, and yeah, okay, you know, I spent 6 hours of my day thinking about the solution and only 2 hours coding,
Yeah,
but you had a complicated problem and it required that 6 hours,
right.
3/4 of the day to figure out the solution so that I could do it in 2 hours, or I could have spent all day, you know, doing a bunch of different stuff and still come to the same solution.
Right.
And all they see at the end is, you know, they'll go look and they'll see, oh, he changed, you know, 10 lines of code.
Yeah.
Well, it took me, you know, 4 hours to track down the issue, 2 hours to figure out what the best way to figure it out was.
And they just go straight to the bottom line. Well, it cost me that amount of money for that just little
Yeah.
thing. But yeah, it's. I think this. I really believe that in this history, since we're providing the service, like we're live since 2005, and a few years later we started to provide a service, the web development service. I honestly think the project we've been the most successful on has been the one who the client was really good also, like was having a good mindset,
Yeah.
was pleasant to work with, because at the end, yeah, you pay for a service, but the person is a human and he or she wants to enjoy the job and the work, and like you said, if you feel that you're gonna be like shit on,
Yeah.
no matter what, like it happened this year with a client, and we had 2 person working for that client, and those people were always unhappy. Even at some point I would jump in on the chat and say, okay, I'm gonna help you with this and that, and that person would complain to the salesperson that, well, why is Raph even putting his nose in it? Like, hey, I'm just trying to help here, you know. And we ended up, you know, just finishing, delivering, and moving on, because it's yeah, I mean, we say client first, but it's also our staff first.
Well,
you know?
yeah, that's the thing. I mean, you don't want one bad client burning out 3 of your developers.
No, 100%.
And I like, you can attest to this. I've worked with, you know, quite a few different clients and projects over the years, and I've been very lucky to have direct contact with some really good clients and build a good relationship with them. And on the other end of the spectrum, I've had those where I'm just like, you know what, communication is down to just straight emails. If you need anything else, talk to Tony or Raph or one of our project managers, and I just can't handle you anymore.
And that's why sometimes some developers just don't want to deal with clients, because that's what they assume right away.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's a developer's job to deal with clients.
No.
Because no, it really isn't. It's the developer's job to develop, essentially. And sometimes it is just easier to go directly to the client.
Right.
Like, we deal with a lot of small firms.
Yeah.
So the client is essentially the project owner, and they're the ones giving you the requirements of what they need. Our bigger clients do have that technical buffer in between, where their business gives them the requirements, their technical team gives us the technical requirements. And that doesn't work out. Like, as a side note, that doesn't always work out as well either, because
I think if I would, like, personally, how I would, let's say there's no company anymore and I have a project to develop, I think, you know, I try to be as nice as possible, give a chance to the people to do a good job. At the end, if they don't, I'm firing them. You know, it's the right of every client. But at least give them what they need in order to succeed in what you're asking, you know. That's I think we should close. Yeah, we should close on that. I think that's a good closer. That's a good closure.
Okay.
That's the I value that a lot. I think that helps in building good relationships.
Oh, definitely.
with everyone. It's a win-win-win. Like the client gets a good job, a good work done. The dev is happy to have worked with the client, and we are happy to have had this client, and everyone's happy. Like it's win-win-win. And yeah. Well, Nick, that was a good conversation.
Cool.
Now I have a super dry mouth. I don't have tea anymore. So I think that means it's time for a wrap up. That was a good talk. Thanks,
Yeah.
man. Thanks, man.
It was a
Appreciate
pleasure.
it.
And maybe
For a guy
next time.
for a guy that is shy, like very impressed that you made it.
I'm just completely ignoring the camera over there to my right.
All right, good. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching. It really means a lot to us. And it would mean even more to us if you would just hit that button, smash that button, like that button, punch that button, flick that button, lick that button.
Whoa. Phrasing test, phrasing. Just click on that button. Please subscribe. It would mean a lot to us. And please comment, whether on YouTube or Twitter, let us know what you thought.